Hi, this is the video for Daf Lammed Zayin, page 37 of Masechet Ketubot for Daf Shevui. I wanted to go over a few psukim that the Talmud talks about here in the context of the rule, what's called Kimle B'derabamine, give him the worse of two punishments, which we've been talking about for quite a long time, really on and off again from the beginning of the chapter, from the beginning of chapter 3. And it's interesting that what the Gemara does here is it brings verses that really in the pshat, the simple meaning of them, have nothing whatsoever to do with this rule, but they read them out of context as if they are teaching this rule that you don't get two punishments, specifically a fine and a death or being sent into the exile city for one crime. They read them out of the context into that context, and then they correctly give the Aramaic translation, which gives us the correct interpretation of the verse. So I'll give you an example. The Torah in Bamidbar says, "V'lo tiklu kofer lenefesh rotzeach." Do not take a ransom for a murderer. Now, the Gemara says, why do I need this? As if the verse means to say that when you go and execute a murderer, you can't also exact from him a fine. And that is, again, the same idea that we've had many other times of give him the worse of two punishments. But we don't need to learn that because we learned it elsewhere. But they answer with the correct Aramaic translation, Lo tishkol mamona mine v'tiftere mikatra. Don't take money from him and thereby exempt him from murder. And that's really what a ransom is. It is allowing a murderer to pay to get away with not being punished for the crime. And the same thing comes up with the Lo tikhu kofer lenush el ir mikrato. Do not allow a person who accidentally murdered to pay so that he doesn't have to run away to the city of refuge. Interestingly, on Saturday night, I was at a place called the World Photo Exhibit, which is the best photos taken in the world, and they're exhibited in all different places, and this was in Tel Aviv. And it showed a case of a man who was being convicted, I am not 100% sure, but it was in Iran, of murder, although I'm not sure if it was intentional or accidental murder. And they were about to hang him up. He was hanging there with his noose around his neck. Obviously, as you know, in Iran, they have the death penalty. And the mother of the victim was supposed to come over. The convicted criminal was standing on a chair, and the mother of the victim had a right to either kick the chair and thereby allow the person to die by hanging, or to slap him in the face, in which case they would send him to jail. And she, in this picture, she slaps him in the face. But the idea there is that the relatives of the victim are the ones who are meting the justice out to the perpetrator. And the Bible is adamant not to allow such a system. Justice is carried out through the courts, as it really is in American law, and not by the consent or by the desire of the victim or the victim's family. And what that means is that if a crime has been committed, it really has to go punished or compensated for, regardless of whether the victim really wants or the victim's family wants compensation. The victim doesn't say, the victim's family doesn't get to say, I would prefer to take money for my child, my husband, my mother, my father, whoever it is, being executed. Rather, the law is absolute. That person has to be punished. And here in the Bible, it is with the death penalty, but that's not really what I'm after today. What I'm after today is the notion that comes from the Bible that justice is administered not from one family to another, but is administered by the state, by the courts, and by the authority, at least in the Torah, by the authority of God. It is not through the authority of the offended family.